Solar panels promise green energy savings, but in Northern Nevada, it can really mess with your ability to sell. This is your guide on why solar can be a risky bet on homes in Northern Nevada. From sky-high leases to vanishing tax credits, we'll uncover why solar often costs more than it saves. And this really comes to light when it's time to sell. We'll break down the traps, expensive financing, contractors that are going out of business, and NV Energy's credit policies that make solar a bad idea unless you're staying put for a decade. If you're eco-driven, great, but expect to hit when it comes time to sell. Stick around for the facts to protect your home's value. My name's Paul Dunham, and we help people move in, out, and around of Northern Nevada. We'd like to help, and our information can be found on the pinned comment below. Nationally, Zillow shows that a home increases in value about 4.1% when a solar system is on it. But the part it doesn't take into consideration is what is the loan against that solar? Because very few sellers pay cash for these solar systems. They're either leased or financed. And that's what can really take the hit on selling in today's market. Large leases and unpaid loans against the solar system can actually scare off buyers and deter them from writing offers on your home. Why? Because buyers don't want to inherit these costs. They're already stretching their limit at today's high mortgage rates. The last thing they can do is add on these monthly fees above and beyond their mortgage payment. Say you're a homeowner in Sparks that installed solar in 2020. You go to list your home in today's market where prices are higher than they were in 2020, but the buyers refused to purchase the home because the payment on the solar was $150, $250, even $300 per month. And now the only way to sell is to agree to pay off that or a portion of it. And these are not small balances. Often these can be $10, $20, $30,000 of your home's equity that gets removed because having to pay off the solar. I've seen solar leases that are $55,000, $60,000 remaining balances. And this has a major negative impact on a home's value. Yes, you might get a higher purchase price, but the net proceeds you'll receive will be far, far lower than the gains you get from the increased value. Often homes with solars, where seller is not agreeable to pay off the balance, will sit because by the time that buyer looks at the solar monthly lease payment or monthly finance payment, then add in their mortgage payment, and then they see the amount of power it actually offsets, it ends up negative. So it's not a good buy for today's buyers. And they move on to other houses where either the seller is agreeable to paying off the solar or paying a substantial amount so that the monthly payment of the solar starts to make sense for the energy consumption, or they'll skip it altogether and focus on houses without solar systems because the monthly payments don't make sense. We do find that the solar leases actually cost more than the financing. Often in financing, we see ranges anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000 loans, but in the leases, it can be double that. Far more expensive than buying and financing the solar system. We've seen $50,000, $60,000 leases on homes that are valued in the 500s. And in today's market, with the fair amount of selection that we have, buyers won't tolerate negative cash flow. And if they do, then they start compromising on price. They start compromising on purchase terms, telling the seller, I will agree to take this negative cash flow solar system, but in exchange, I want a lower price so that my mortgage payment is lower and this all makes sense. So either way, it ends up being the seller taking the hit on these systems. Another reason to be cautious of these, in 2026, the tax credits disappear. That's not going to make these solar systems even more expensive. Now, if you are adamant about getting solar and you plan on living in your house for the next 10 years, do it this year because by next year, those tax incentives and credits are going to be gone. But if you're thinking about selling, in the next 5 years, 10 years, solar is not for you. It is a long-term strategy. It is a burden when it is passed on to the next buyer. As long as you live in your home long enough and the home appreciates through time, a decade of ownership, now you've paid down, gotten benefit from the solar system, it can start to make sense. But now keep an eye on the lifeline of the solar system. What is it producing in 10 years? How much longer will it last? Because buyers will take into consideration the age of the solar system. It's viewed just like a water heater, a furnace, and an air conditioner. It does have a lifespan and it will eventually need to be replaced. We find that people that own their solar systems for about 10 years don't really see negative consequences of it. It's the people who put their system on a year ago, 6 months ago. I've even helped people sell houses where it hasn't been connected yet. That's how new it is. Those can have devastating effects on a seller's proceeds. And we are seeing the market shift where sellers are agreeing to pay off these systems before selling. What that means is the competition is doing it. So then if you're thinking about selling, it's going to start forcing you to go into that direction just to even meet the market demands. And we are seeing this market shift where second owners of solar systems don't have monthly payments. And those folks have great benefits because now they have a solar system on their house so they don't have to pay electricity. Those are great benefits. So you are going to start seeing a trend of sellers paying these off in full so that sellers will buy their home. Now, sometimes this can be compromised. Sometimes with the right offers, only half has to be paid off. If you are thinking about selling and you think this does apply to you, the one thing I do recommend is reaching out to your solar company and see if a principal amount is added, can the payment be restructured? Because what I've found is buyers prefer to have the payment reduced than paid off sooner because they don't want a monthly negative cash flow. So let's say you have a lease and it's $56,000, $60,000. If you pay $30,000 of it, so now there's only 30 or 36 remaining, will that change the monthly payment for the buyer? Because that's what they really care about. Some do, some don't. So if you are thinking about selling and you are in this situation, talk to your solar company and see if you can get the payment reduced by putting a large lump sum against it. Or does it only pay it off sooner? I've learned that buyers prefer having the monthly payment reduced than keeping the payment same and having it paid off sooner. They don't find it much difference. It is better to put a lump sum on the balance and get that payment reduced. And like I said, a lot of sellers right now are just paying them off in full. Here's a fourth reason: the contractors installing it. So a lot of these warranties are passed through the contractors that actually sold you the system. We're finding that a lot of these contractors have gone bankrupt and gone out of business. If you remember about the last 2 to 3 years, all these solar companies popped up and people were knocking on the door selling systems. A lot of these companies are now out of business. Now, there's some established companies here in town that have been picking up these clients and doing repairs, but a lot of them aren't under warranties anymore because the companies don't exist. And the manufacturers are going to have warranty, but there's still fees with the installers. So you will find that warranty work is not quite as easy because you go to call the company that installed it, and now they're no longer in business. That is risk. But there are some reputable companies here in town that have been in business for a lot of years that are picking up these clients. Actually, I heard the term orphan client, which means that you have a solar system, but no contractor or installer to call anymore. There are companies in town who've been around for a long time that will take on these clients and then start helping them with their maintenance and service and repairs of the system. A lot of these solar installers have come and gone, so do use caution on the company you do pick. And if you do have them installed, you might want to see if your company's still in business. A lot of them are not. Solar risk don't stop there. A lot of it has to do with the credits on how NB energy works. So a lot of these systems produce more power than the home consumes. I remember the infancy of these solar systems popping up. Homeowners were hoping that if they generated more power than they needed, then the power company would actually pay them to use that power. That could offset the increased monthly payment, and then it all make financial sense. That's not how solar works. The power company offers credits towards your electric bill, not your gas bill, but your power bill. So remember, when you're looking at your NB energy statement, if you don't have Southwest Gas, that's a combined bill. So you need to look at how much power you're consuming and then how much natural gas you're consuming. And when you're looking at your solar system, you look at the electrical bill. You can receive credits for that electrical bill for producing more power than you need. But here's what we found. If the system is far too big for the home and you're generating tons of excess power, the credits get too large and it stops offsetting the monthly cost of your bill. It stops offsetting the cost of your monthly lease or your monthly finance charge. Because sure, you're not paying a power bill, but let's say you're only using $50 of power a month, but your solar bill is $200 per month. Eventually the credits get so large that they have no value anymore. And now you're producing power on your house, giving it back to the power company, and then they're selling your power, making money off the power that you generate. And you're the one fronting the finance bill. You're the one leasing the system, generating the power. And that's when folks can really get into trouble when it comes to selling. And that's when the negative impacts come to light on how it affects your net proceeds when it comes time to sell. Another pitfall: finances, money is superseding eco benefits, because it's really hard to dispute that solar systems don't help our environment. Northern Nevada power comes from coal, comes from natural gas. Now, people can argue how solar panels are manufactured. That's for another video. But from an eco standpoint, I get it. Here's what we see in the market. Finances supersede eco benefit. And if eco benefit is very important to you, that is awesome. But then you have to be willing to take that financial cost on, because the next buyer, we've learned, will not. So it's important to understand the environmental benefit that you're doing by generating power through solar will not be a financial investment. It will be a cost. And I think that's why it's important to discuss this. It's because a lot of people do put solar panels on their houses for the economics, thinking that's going to financially benefit them by generating their own power. And we've seen in the market time and time again, it does not. So what's the biggest takeaway on considering solar systems for your home? It's time. Just like any other major improvement to your home, you have to live in the home for a number of years for it to make financial sense. My recommendation, 10. If you're not going to live in your home for the next 10 years, solar is not for you. I've seen people shackled to their home, unable to sell because they have a solar system. I've seen homes that have such firm solar leases that the seller can't sell it on, actually goes to foreclosure because they put the solar system on a year prior of selling, they became upside down, unable to make their payments, and eventually lost their home to foreclosure. These are real risks that happen when putting on solar and not planning on living in your home for a long time. So if you're living in your home for a decade, solar is a great option. I welcome you to look into it. Just make sure you have a 10-year strategy. Anything less than a 10-year strategy, you have to have a part of your plan. You need to be prepared for a financial hit. It's very neat that we can now generate our own power if we want to, but don't think of it as an income revenue stream. Think of it as a long-term investment for your long-term living. If you're not living in your home for 10 years, really reconsider solar. Move to your next home, consider it for that home. It is less likely to be a financial benefit, and you can count on it more being a financial loss.